Welcome to the Divrei Torah for Parshas Chayei Sarah. It should be a refuah shlema to all those who need a refuah, especially Noam Avraham ben Atar Shlamit and Mordechai Eitan ben Sarah, and for all of the Chayalim, that they should be successful in their mission. In their missions, they should be safe and sound, especially Dov Ber ben Shena Chaya. So we start off this week's Divrei Torah with a story. So we find a lot of Gemilus Chassadim throughout the Parsha, starting in the beginning with bearing Sarah, to the very end with finding Yitzchak Shidduch. And so Rosh Shlomo Shvadran tells a story. One of his children were sick, wasn't feeling well, so he decided to take the rest of his children to his mother's house so that they wouldn't be infected, they wouldn't get the illness that the other child had. So early the next morning, after davening, Rosh Shlomo Shvadran takes his children, starts walking from Sharei Chesed to Beis Yisrael, and on his way he meets up with Rav Yitzchak Sher. Rav Yitzchak Sher says, "Good morning." Rosh Shlomo says, "Good morning" back. So Rav Yitzchak asks, "Where are you headed to?" And Rosh Shlomo explained, "One of my children is sick, so I'm bringing the rest of my kids over to my mother's house." So Rav Yitzchak paused for a moment and said, "So what?" So Rosh Shlomo was taken aback. He didn't really understand the question. So thinking he didn't explain himself clearly, he restated what he said before and explained that I'm afraid my other children will get sick, so I'm taking them to my mother's house to keep them safe, to keep them from getting infected. So, and why? So, Lama. So Rosh Shlomo began to feel a little frustrated. He didn't really understand what Rav Yitzchak was getting at. So he explained again, because one of my children is sick, and I don't want the others to catch it, so that's why I'm bringing them to my mother's house. So Rav Yitzchak looked at him intently, and he said, "Okay, so the big animal takes care of the little animal." Remember, this is all in Hebrew. And what did he mean by that? And he means like even Balei Chaim, even animals take care of their young. So, but you're not just doing that. So Rosh Shlomo was stunned by this unexpected response. And so Rav Yitzchak elaborated right away. He saw that Rosh Shlomo didn't fully understand him. So Rav Yitzchak said, "But you're not just taking care of your children. It's not just like other Balei Chaim. You are doing Gemilus Chassadim, acts of kindness with a Jewish child who just happens to be your son, who happens to be your child, your son or daughter." They parted ways, and Rosh Shlomo continued his journey. But those few words from Rav Yitzchak stayed with him. He realized the profound message Rav Yitzchak had given him. Every act, even those that seem routine, can be transformed into Gemilus Chassadim with the right mindset. So later that morning, Rosh Shlomo returned home to find that his wife was struggling to carry buckets of water from the well. Back in those days, they still were using the well. And so immediately he rushed over to his wife and said, "Hineni muchen mezuman, I'm ready and prepared to do chesed with a Jewish woman who happens to be my wife." He took both buckets and carried them home. And for half a year, this message from Rav Yitzchak, this one sentence, these few words, stuck with him and guided him even in the household. Each and every time he did something for his wife, he did something with his children, even a small household chore, he would remind himself, "Hineni muchan mezuman la'asos chesed," that I am doing the mitzvah of Gemilus Chesed. I'm ready and prepared to do acts of kindness. So Rosh Shlomo concluded and explained at the end of the story that a true chacham knows how to take dust and turn it into gold. These everyday, mundane manners that people may think raising children or doing household chores or household tasks, it's mundane, it's insignificant. But no, with the right intentions, you can turn this into a gold mine. You can turn this into a gold mine of Gemilus Chassadim to be uncovered at home. So Mirz Hashem, we should all find in our homes the gold mine of Gemilus Chassadim that are there. So moving on to the pasuk in the beginning of Perek Chav Daled, pasuk Aleph, Avraham Zakein ba b'yamim. Those words, ba b'yamim. So Rosh Shmuel of Sanim, the Divrei Shmuel, which we'll find in the Sefer, in honor of the Sanim dinner that's coming up this coming Sunday, Mirz Hashem, which my great-grandfather, Zichrono Livracha, was very involved with, Mr. Moses Dykman. So he writes, that there are people whose days are filled with confusion. Their day comes to an end, and they realize that they didn't spend their time wisely. It was an empty day. The time was spent aimlessly. But on the other side of the spectrum, there are those who are consistently preparing their days. So the Divrei Shmuel explains that our primary avoda is to be like Avraham, bo bayamim, truly coming into one's days, meaning with mindfulness and purpose. This means living intentionally, preparing for each day while being fully present and recognizing one's role in each moment. It's making the most of each day. It emphasizes the importance of setting goals, of planning one's day, of making each moment meaningful and aligned with one's purpose. Mirz Hashem, we should all be able to live each of our days with purpose and meaning. After the story of the Maras Machpelah, the Torah transitions to the narrative of finding a wife for Yitzchak. So it says in the pasuk, as we just read, Avraham zakein ba bayamim. Avram was old, well advanced in his years. Hashem beirachas Avraham bakol. And Hashem had blessed Avraham with everything. What does it mean that Avraham is blessed bakol, with everything? So there's a famous Even Ezra, which the Ramban concurs as well, explains that everything refers to all the things men desire in life: longevity, wealth, honor, and sons. Avram had been granted all these blessings by Hashem at this point of time. So Rav Avram Shapiro, in this Birkas Avraham, this little pamphlet that I have here, which was written in 1931, he asks a compelling question. Why did Avraham wait until Avraham was old to bless him with bakol, with everything? Why not grant him these blessings earlier in his life? So Rav Shapiro offers an answer based on the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim writes in his Pticha Kolelet that generally there's no reward for mitzvos in this world, because there's concern that a person might later regret their mitzvah observance and turn to sin, chas v'shalom. However, once a person has passed the majority of their years without sinning, the likelihood of them straying diminishes. As the Gemara teaches us in Yuma, that once a person has passed most of their years without sin, they're unlikely to sin further. So at this stage, Hashem rewards the individual for their mitzvos even in this world. So this idea helps us now understand the verse more deeply. The Avraham Zakein, now that Avraham was old and had passed the majority of his years without sin, therefore, Hashem Beirach as Avraham Bakol, Hashem blessed him with reward even in this world, granting him everything he desired. Avraham's unwavering dedication to Hashem teaches us that while the ultimate reward for mitzvos awaits in Olam Haba, in the world to come, consistent righteousness can bring blessing even in this world. May we all strive to follow in Avraham's ways, example, and merit Hashem's abundant blessing in this world. So in Perek Chav Daled, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, Eliezer is recounting the story, and it says, "V'teled Sarah, Eshes Adoni Van LaAdoni Achrezik Nasa, V'tino Es Kol Asher Lo." Right, so Sarah gave birth to my master after her old age, etc. So Achrezik Nasa. So the Griz, Rav Yitzchak Zev Halevi, and his parish on Chumash, points out the pasuk specifically says Acharei Ziknasa. But why didn't it say just in her old age? Why does it have to stress acharei, after her elder years? What was after? So the miracle of Sarah was not merely that she gave birth at an advanced age, but that she actually regained her youth. After her elder years, she became a Nara once again. Eliezer highlights this miracle, emphasizing that Sarah gave birth not in her old age, but after her elder years, after her old age, alluding to her miraculous rejuvenation. So moving on to Perek Chav Daled Pasuk Lametes, Eliezer arrives at Rivka's house, and he starts recounting his discussion with his master Avraham, including their conversation about what to do if the chosen girl refuses to come with him. So if you look at a careful reading of the Psukim, it reveals a difference. In Bereshis, in Pasuk Hey, during the original discussion, the Torah writes, Ulai, perhaps with the Vav, Malay. While in verse 39, Lametes, in our verse that we're discussing, when Eliezer recounts the conversation, it is written without a Vav, Chaser. So Rashi picks up on this difference, and he explains that Ulai, without a Vav, can also be read Eli, to me, hinting that Eliezer had a personal interest. He wanted his own daughter to marry Yitzchak. So the Kotzker Rebbe in the 19th century, in the sefer that I have, and Nothing But the Truth, puts together some of the teachings of the Kotzker Rebbe. Why not reveal his personal interest during the original conversation? Why did it wait until Pasuk Lametes to teach us this? It should have hinted it before. So the Kotzker Rebbe offers a psychological insight. He explains that when one is actively immersed in a situation with personal stakes, it's nearly impossible to recognize the extent to which one's actions and thoughts are influenced by his subjective interests. In the moment, one believes that they are entirely objective. However, with time and distance, in retrospect, one gains clarity and can recognize subtle personal motivations that were previously unnoticed. Only when Eliezer retells the story with the benefit of hindsight does he acknowledge his personal interest. And it is in this moment that the Torah highlights his subjective bias, teaching us the vital importance of self-awareness and reflection in recognizing our inherent biases. For our final thought, Perek Chav Daled Pasuk Mem Vav. So there's an interesting halacha that we can learn from Rivka's conversation with Eliezer. So regarding food, the Gemara in Brachos teaches that one is forbidden to eat before feeding their animals. The Sefer Chasidim learns from a pasuk in our parsha that when it comes to drinking, a person should drink first and only afterward provide water to their animals. In other words, the prohibition of eating before your animal does not apply. So this halacha is actually brought down in the Magen Avraham, lehalacha, and he notes that this distinction between food and drink is learnt from Rivka's actions in this week's parsha, just like the Sefer Chasidim. And the Magen Avraham says there, when offering Eliezer and his camels water, what does Rivka say? She say, drink, and I will also water your camels. But for food, as learned elsewhere, animals are fed first. So the Makor Chesed on the Sefer Chasidim raises a question. This is quoted in the beautiful Sefer Shal Rav, this entire Divrei Torah. And he quotes from this Makor Chesed that in Brachos, the source for feeding animals first is based on the verse Ve'achalta v'savata. That's one of the psukim that are written to teach this. Ve'achalta refers to food, and v'savata refers to drink. So if that's the case, that would imply that one must give their animal to eat and to drink before themselves. So not only food, but also drink. So he answers, that the drinking referenced in the Gemara Brachos, in V'achalta v'savata, is specific to the drink that accompanies or follows a meal. However, drinking before a meal, or drinking outside of the meal context, is not included in this obligation, and one may drink even before giving their animal to eat. The Orach Chaim seems to disagree with the Sefer Chasidim, and from his language in our Parsha, he seems to indicate that both food and drink, there is a prohibition to feed, to drink or eat before you give food and drink to your animal. So how does he reconcile Rivka's actions in our Parsha? So he questions, why did Rivka give Eliezer water first? Seemingly, this contradicts the general rule that we just explained. So he explains that, no, this rule only applies when there's no danger or distress or tsar. But if there is any sakana or tsar or significant discomfort, such as a traveler arriving after a long journey, like Eliezer, then the person's needs take precedence over those of their animals. And this is an interesting halacha that we can learn, whether you have a dog at home or a cat or whatever animal you may have at home. It's an important halacha to know that you should always feed your animal first before feeding yourself, but if you're just drinking, you can always drink before feeding your animal. Have a wonderful Shabbos. I hope you enjoyed these Divrei Torah.